This presentation discusses new updates in the latest nutrition research. There are always a lot of nutrition trends on social media, and one of the worst parts about this is that the nutrition information that seems to be most popular has no basis in actual research. Think about some of the trends you have heard. These are the topics that will be covered in today's presentation: intermittent fasting, quality of sleep and food intake, childhood overweight and obesity, a new test to determine diet quality, the importance of when you eat, eating fat, exercise as a treatment for chronic disease, and then changes in the consumption of sugary drinks. Intermittent fasting is one of the trends that has been very popular. Think about a personal experience you may have had with this trend or an experience of someone you know. The scientific evidence for the health benefits of intermittent fasting, often extrapolated from animal studies, based on observational data on religious fasting, or derived from experimental studies with small sample sizes. The health outcomes that have been associated with intermittent fasting include weight changes and altered metabolic parameters associated with type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. Scientists have proposed several mechanisms possibly linking the benefits received from intermittent fasting with human health. These are circadian biology and the GI microbiome. The three types of intermittent fasting currently being researched are alternate day fasting, modified fasting regimens, and time-restricted feeding. Alternate day fasting regimens involve alternating fasting days where no energy-containing foods or beverages are consumed, with eating days where foods and beverages are consumed as desired. The research associated with alternate day fasting regimens has had small sample sizes, but has shown statistically significant weight loss, a decrease in glucoregulatory markers, and mixed results with lipid levels. One important thing to note is that the considerable hunger that participants felt on fasting days did not fade over time, meaning this may not be a long-term solution for weight loss. Modified fasting regimens allow for the consumption of 20 to 25% of energy needs on scheduled fasting days. It uses a 5-2 approach, which involves severe energy restriction for 2 non-consecutive days a week and eating as desired during the other 5 days. Research with modified fasting regimens has shown statistically significant weight loss, but mixed effects on glucoregulatory markers, lipid levels, and inflammatory markers. Little evidence shows that modified fasting regimens are better than the standard energy-restricted regimens for weight loss. Time-restricted feeding allows for the consumption of food as desired within specific time windows that include fasting periods on a routine basis. The amount of time spent fasting would exceed the duration of nighttime fasting. An example would be studies that include less than 3 meals per day. At the time that this particular article was published, only 2 trials existed, so any results associated with this type of fasting should be evaluated with caution. This type of fasting is based on aligning eating patterns with circadian rhythms, and results have shown statistically significant reductions in weight, reductions in fasting glucose, and improvements in LDL and HDL cholesterol. Intermittent fasting regimens that limit food consumption to the daytime hours may be utilizing the method of circadian biology to improve metabolic health. Circadian biology refers to processes such as hormone secretion patterns, physical coordination, and sleep that display patterns based on a 24-hour period or cycle. The biologic clock in the hypothalamus in the brain is based on light and dark, while the biologic clock in peripheral tissues, such as that in the liver, is based on feeding and non-feeding. The circadian biology hypothesis states that synchronizing these two biological clocks can lead to a reduced risk of chronic disease. However, this evidence is based largely on animal research. Another theory about intermittent fasting references the gastrointestinal tract. Many functions of the gastrointestinal tract exhibit circadian rhythms. For example, gastric emptying and blood flow to the stomach are greater during the daytime, while metabolic responses to glucose load are slower in the evening. Intermittent fasting may directly influence the gut microbiome in ways that can lead to weight loss in obese individuals. The next question we're going to address is, are quality of sleep and food consumption linked? It appears that they are. In an analysis of 11 previous studies, it has been shown that a lack of sleep the night before can result in overeating. In these studies, 172 participants either experienced a night of restricted sleep, defined as 4 hours, or had a night of normal rest. Participants were offered a breakfast buffet or scheduled meals the next day, and calorie intake and any energy expenditure were tracked. After limited sleep, people consumed an average of 385 extra calories the next day, and popular choices were frosted cupcakes and medium fries. These people also consumed more fat and less protein. Why might this be? Perhaps sleep deprivation affects hormones that control appetite. These authors stated that a lack of sleep may heighten the desire for food as a reward. Limitations were present, including a small sample, that it was completed in a controlled lab, and that it was a short study, but it is definitely worth investigating further. This graph shows that the rate of obesity in children of all age groups, as young as 2 and as old as 19, has steadily increased since the mid-1900s. There are several common ideas regarding this steady increase. Consider ones you have heard. What factors are linked to overweight in children? This observational research looked at patterns of BMI during the first 10 years of life. It was based on the Millennium Cohort Study on about 19,000 families in the United Kingdom. Some of the factors that were found linked to childhood overweight and obesity include mothers smoking during pregnancy, children skipping breakfast, having lack of a regular bedtime and insufficient sleep, and mothers who are overweight or obese. This study showed that a disrupted routine may influence weight gain through increased appetite and consumption of energy-dense foods. Somewhat surprisingly, breastfeeding and early introduction of solid foods were not associated with children's weight in this study. Sugary drink consumption, fruit intake, TV viewing, and sports participation were not strongly linked to unhealthy weight gain. These are early life factors that can be modified for prevention techniques. Why is this important? Overweight and obesity in children is linked to poorer mental health. This includes low self-esteem, unhappiness, and an increased risk of engaging in behaviors like smoking and alcohol consumption. Our next question is, can a urine test detect whether someone has a healthy diet? In fact, it can. A 5-minute urine test has been shown to be an independent indicator of quality of diet. The test shows the biomarkers from the breakdown of foods like red meat, chicken, fish, and fruits and vegetables. It also shows how much fat, sugar, fiber, and protein a person has eaten. Why is this important? Currently, we rely on individuals self-reporting their intake. Many people underreport unhealthy food and overreport their intakes of fruits and vegetables. Inaccuracies most often come from females, those who are overweight or obese, and those who come from low socioeconomic status. In this particular study, 9 volunteers followed 4 diets, ranging from healthy to very unhealthy. Volunteers followed diets strictly for 3 days while in a research facility. Urine samples were collected morning, afternoon, and evening. Metabolites even showed which people had consumed citrus fruits, grapes, and leafy green vegetables. In the future, this profile could be used as a reference standard. Other future uses include weight loss programs, patient rehabilitation, and other uses. This test may be available to the public within the next 2 years. Graphics such as this one are often circulating on social media. I found this particular one on Pinterest. It was obviously not created by a registered dietitian because it says certain foods that are okay to eat after 8 p.m. And 2 of the most interesting ones included are baked or grilled meat and salmon. This brings the question, is when you eat as important as what you eat, which we will be talking about next. The study used in this article was the American Heart Association Meal Timing and Frequency Study with implications for cardiovascular disease prevention. It was a comprehensive literature search strategy used to identify relevant articles. The cardiometabolic health markers studied were obesity, lipid profiles, insulin resistance, and blood pressure. Eating patterns studied were skipping breakfast, intermittent fasting, meal frequency, and the timing of eating occasions. Studies excluded from this analysis were those that involved supplements, pharmacological substances, people with type 2 diabetes, and very active individuals or athletes. This slide discusses the epidemiological findings associated with skipping breakfast. Approximately 20 to 30% of adults do not eat breakfast in the United States. In this study, breakfast was defined as the first meal eaten before or at the start of daily activities within 2 hours of waking and consumption of food or beverage between 5 and 9 a.m. The cardiovascular disease risk factors that were studied included high LDL cholesterol, low HDL cholesterol, and elevated blood pressure. Diabetes risk factors that were increased based on skipping breakfast were hemoglobin A1C, higher fasting plasma glucose, and all-day postprandial hyperglycemia. Results showed an association between skipping breakfast and a low nutritional adequacy of the person's diet in the rest of the day, a higher BMI, more weight gain over time, increased risk of type 2 diabetes, and increased risk of cardiovascular disease. On the other hand, daily breakfast eaters had a lower risk of hypertension and metabolic syndrome and were less likely to have cardiovascular disease risk factors. In clinical interventions studying the same behavior, little evidence is available. The evidence that is available shows that breakfast possibly contributes to a healthier eating pattern and slight improvements in cardiometabolic risk profiles. Epidemiological studies about meal frequency have shown mixed findings regarding eating frequency and risk of obesity. Greater eating frequency has been associated with greater risk of weight gain, but lower total cholesterol and lower HDL cholesterol. Greater eating frequency was related to improved risk status with respect to cardiovascular disease risk factors and diabetes in multiple studies. Clinical interventions studying the same behavior have shown no clear role of meal frequency on energy metabolism, reducing appetite, blood pressure, insulin levels, or fasting glucose. Increasing one's meal frequency may reduce total and LDL cholesterol levels, but it has little effect on HDL cholesterol and on triglycerides. All of the trials in the clinical intervention portion studying meal frequency lacked a control group, and sample sizes were small. Obviously, more research is needed. In epidemiological studies about meal timing, late-night eating was shown to be associated with increased risk of obesity and may be associated with an increase in C-reactive protein, a marker of inflammation, and increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Clinical interventions studying the same behavior have shown that restricting the period during which food consumption occurs could help with weight management, and that consuming a larger percentage of energy later in the day may lead to adverse cardiometabolic risk profile changes. These studies, however, were limited in scope and very diverse. Again, more research is needed. The overall takeaway from this past study is that data suggests that irregular eating patterns appear less favorable for achieving a healthy cardiometabolic risk profile. Intentional eating with mindful attention to the timing and frequency of eating occasions could lead to healthier lifestyle and cardiometabolic risk factor management. Eating fat has often been misassociated with increasing body fat. However, consuming fat in the diet does not directly increase body fat. In fact, fat has benefits that you will not find with carbohydrates or proteins, and these are especially benefit with healthy fats, such as omega-3 fatty acids. For example, fat will not increase blood glucose, leading to a spike in the hormone insulin. Fat can help reduce cravings, and fat can prevent heart disease and help with weight loss maintenance. Foods with healthy fats are wild fatty fish such as sardines, mackerel, herring, and wild salmon, nuts and seeds, avocados, and extra virgin olive oil, among others. Well, if dietary fat doesn't increase body fat, what does? Body fat is increased by prolonged consumption or lack of expenditure of calories over the amount that your body requires to maintain weight. These calories can just as easily come from carbohydrates or proteins as they can come from fat. The next question to address is, can exercise be a treatment for chronic illness? Doctors underprescribe exercise despite research that it shows it can deliver benefits like those from drugs and surgery, but with fewer side effects. Consider why this might be. In people with COPD or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, exercise and increasing overall fitness and limiting weight gain can improve breathing and reduce fatigue. Of course, these people should receive doctor evaluation before starting exercise, and the fact that they may need supplemental oxygen during workouts or a referral to a pulmonary rehab should not inhibit their engaging in exercise. It is recommended that people with COPD engage in 4 to 5 one-hour-long sessions per week that consist of low-impact aerobics and strength training. In people with type 2 diabetes, aerobic exercise and strength training can be almost as effective as some drugs in controlling blood glucose levels. In 2012, a study showed that 9% of people with type 2 diabetes who combined exercise and dietary changes for 2 years eliminated the need for medication altogether. Timing of exercise around meals and insulin, plus having readily available snacks, will help people with type 2 diabetes avoid hypoglycemia or low blood sugar. It is recommended that people with type 2 diabetes, like the general population, engage in 150 minutes of moderate level physical activity, broken down into 3 to 5 sessions, along with strength training. Osteoarthritis occurs when protective cartilage at the ends of joints wears away and causes pain, which makes some people want to avoid physical activity. However, a 2015 review found that people with knee arthritis who enrolled in exercise programs reported less pain and improved ability to perform basic daily tasks. A physical therapist or personal trainer can help people with osteoarthritis establish appropriate form. It is recommended that people with osteoarthritis engage in 150 minutes of low-impact activities and strength training targeting the muscles surrounding the areas with osteoarthritis. Sodas and sugary drinks have been in the news a lot lately. Think of some reasons why this might be. The next question we'll address is what kind of progress is being made in the consumption of sugary drinks. This data comes from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. Almost 2/3 of boys and girls consumed at least one sugar-sweetened beverage on a given day. Boys averaged 164 calories from sugar-sweetened beverages per day, which was about 7.3% of their total caloric intake. Girls averaged 121 calories a day from sugar-sweetened beverages, which was about 7.2% of their total caloric intake. Older youth had the highest mean intake in percent of daily calories from sugar-sweetened beverages relative to younger children. Non-Hispanic Asian boys and girls consumed the least calories and lowest percent of total calories from sugar-sweetened beverages versus non-Hispanic white children, non-Hispanic black children, and Hispanic children. The 2015-2020 Dietary Guidelines for Americans recommend reducing added sugar intake to less than 10% of total calories per day. This is for both children and adults. Research shows a correlation between sugar-sweetened beverages and the following: dental caries, weight gain, type 2 diabetes, dyslipidemia, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And this is all in children. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned more about the latest trends and updates in nutrition. This concludes the presentation.